All right. Packed it up again for you, ladies and gentlemen. You know, just the generosity thing. Welcome to Kelly and Company, and on today's show, the Luminato Festival is back this June in Toronto. It's offering many inclusive performances in theater, music, and dance, as well as a unique audio-described tour around the city of Toronto. Christine Malec will be here with those details, as well as she's going to talk to us about the associated Luminato podcasts, and she'll get into that with us. And a recent report published by Community Living Ontario is shedding light on the exclusion, seclusion, and restraint of students with disabilities in Ontario schools. Shawn Pegg, Director of Social Policy and Strategic Initiatives with Community Living Ontario, has the update for us in a little while on the show. Whew, a lot coming your way on Kelly and Company. Wow, buckle up now.
This is Kelly and Company.
I'm Kelly MacDonald. Welcome to the program. Wherever you're checking us out, really glad to have you on board. It's a lot of content on today's show, so hang on. Nisreen Abdulmajid joining me. And Nisreen, I notice Mark Carney, our Prime Minister, really busy. I mean, he's being sworn in everywhere. Like today, sworn in, of course, as the MP for Nepean. Get it? This poor guy has been sworn in 3 times. So today's going back when, of course, he took over as Prime Minister. He had to be sworn in there. And then when we voted him in, I know some of you out there saying, oh, I didn't vote for him. Okay, but you know what I mean. When he got voted in, he had to be sworn in once again. Man, there's a lot of cussing going on over there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of responsibility that he has to take on. I mean, it's expected. It is part of the job. So no complaints, I guess.
Yeah, and I think when you're not, as people like to remind him, well, he's not really a politician. You're going to be put in these different positions where he has to have his seat. He got in due to circumstances with Justin Trudeau leaving his position. And then, of course, hung in there, did everything he needed to be voted in as Prime Minister, and again, sworn in.
I would consider him as a politician, though. Like, why would anyone question otherwise, though?
The background. I mean,
it's his experience. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, because he hasn't been in that position at all before. And again, you know, you see this in different places now more and more. Well, does it matter? Well, yeah, there are a lot of things he'll tell you now as he's gone through this, I'm sure, that mattered in the way of standing, obviously, having career, being trusted, but also all the speak, all the policy, the procedure. You know, the man certainly is around a lot of politicians, has been a part and consulted a lot of politicians in his time. But definitely, I'm sure, totally different, and you need that time to build up and crawl up the ladder so that you have, you know, where all the bodies are laid. No, I guess that's probably a little harsh. To where you know where not to step and where to step and how to do it, all proper procedure.
I guess people can call him practicing politician. That's the best title you can give him.
Politician in training. Boy, that I'm sure is something that other countries, other political leaders say, yeah, I meet with Canada's politician in what? And maybe we'll change the title to that just for some fun for a few months, right? That would be just a riot. Remember to check out our podcast from your podcast platform of choice. Subscribe, maybe give us also a rating and review while you're in there. Also find us on, of course, YouTube, where you get a good opportunity to check out the content for the show and have some fun following along. It's where the best place to find us, our YouTube page. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe there. And wherever you go to enjoy the program, we appreciate it, whether you're listening on AMI audio from YouTube or the podcast. And whenever you get an opportunity, if you would, give us a rating and review. Let us know you're out there. We'd love to hear from you. It is estimated that a significant portion of the 52,000 social workers in Canada work within the child and family welfare system. It makes you wonder, why choose to work in child welfare? On May 14th, we recognized National Children and Youth and Care Day in Canada for those who work in the child welfare system. Every day is child and Everyday Child and Youth Day. CEO of Children Aid Society, Mary Beth Moellenkamp, has devoted her career to children in care in the welfare system, and she's here to share her story with us, experience and realities of working in this field. Nice to have you back visiting us here on Kelly and Company.
Great to be back. Thank you and good morning.
So let's begin with, just to be sure we're all on the same page, what is the role of a social worker?
Yeah. So the role of a social worker is multifaceted, but within the child welfare system, our role is really to help support families ensure the safety and well-being of children and youth, right? And we do that by strengthening families through system navigation, advocacy, and just creating support systems and networks so that families can thrive. And so it's really important because I know sometimes when people think about the child welfare system, they think about our responsibility in terms of assessing, abuse and neglect. But a lot of our work is actually done from a preventative space with families trying to help ensure that their families are cared for and that they have the supports that they need.
Wow.
So
that's got to be the hardest, isn't it? The supports people need in assessing that. Go ahead, Niz.
Yeah, it's a lot. You started as a social worker 22 years ago, and today you're the CEO of Peel CAS. So give us your journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, so, many, many years ago, I feel like I keep telling people I started when I was 10, but we know that that's not true. But when I started, I had the opportunity to work directly with families in multitude of different areas. And that really kind of taught me about the resilience and the need for the social workers who work within our system. They work all hours of the day doing advocacy, often at the expense of some of their own needs, but they do it because they know the importance and they know that that it's needed and really important work. And over the years, I sort of moved from doing this direct practice to wanting to make a change at a system level, right? And so had the opportunity to work with community to develop some sort of multi-system, multi-sector collaboratives that would change things for children and youth, because we know that sometimes there are systemic barriers, and how we address that is that we have systems like child welfare come together with other systems and local, provincial, and even federal governments to try to make changes and do things and make the circumstances better for the children and youth we serve.
So with that being said, I know we hear a lot about sometimes when there's trouble, there's problems, the law enforcement, and needing that kind of relationship, obviously going back and forth, working together. But I'm assuming there's so many other community, and every community being different, partnerships on that level that you'd be speaking to as well, outside of government, outside of law enforcement, but just those organizations, boys and girls clubs, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. It's really important that we're integrated. From my perspective, I think child welfare organizations need to be integrated in their community, and you need to customize your approach to what your community needs. I often think about Peel Region because we're a bit of a microcosm, I think, for the whole country in terms of the diversity. And so what's going to work for one community is not going to work for another. And so we need to be working with our ethnocultural partners, our health partners, our grassroots organizations, settlement organizations to develop systems of care that's going to meet the needs of a child and youth. And so often we think of child welfare and we connect them to justice, and we think about police and we think about those systems, but that's really in those dire emergency circumstances. But the majority of the work that we do is actually with community partners trying to prevent families from needing more intensive services from our system.
Incredible. Yeah, that's really amazing. And when you think about the involvement and how many different ways over, the 22 years you're talking and seeing so much kind of change and things like that. Now, you've also spearheaded and been involved with many types of initiatives around child welfare. What are some of the broader challenges you've addressed over the years?
Yeah, so there's a number of different issues, but one of the ones that we addressed many years ago is our organization actually supports the whole province and is doing some work nationally around the issue of newcomer and children and youth in care who may not have their status addressed. And so we know that children and youth who leave us, who have unresolved status issues, may face challenges with employment or education. So we came together as GTA agencies to say, how can we do something differently and create a system where we ensure that children and youth don't leave us? And so we created the Child Welfare Immigration Center of Excellence that now does that work for children and youth with unresolved immigration issues, settlement issues, or even addressing border-related issues. And I think when we think about newcomer families that come to Canada, we know that sometimes they may be overrepresented in our system, that they come to our attention. I think the last report I said more than 2.2 times. And it's not always because of a child protection issue. It might be a settlement issue. It might be they might be struggling to find housing. They might be struggling to navigate a system that is unfamiliar. It's hard for us sometimes to navigate the system, let alone somebody new to our community or to our province. And so that work is something that we've been doing over the years. And the other initiative I would say is just improving things for the children and youth that are in our care and creating better services and better programming for them. So we developed our Trailblazers Youth Center, which was designed by youth for youth, to improve programming for them from health, identity, physical literacy, education, financial literacy. And we create those programs so that we don't just give them good enough, but we give them the best. And that has helped us to evolve. And we're starting to look at other ways that as a system, we can be involved in social infrastructure projects. And we're currently partnering with the city of Brampton to bring something around a youth wellness hub. So these types of initiatives are ways that we can do things locally and regionally that we hope will be scalable, not just within the province, but across the country as well.
Wow.
I think that's really amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nis, sorry.
I was saying, yeah, it's a lot to consider. You don't know how much to put together and think about. And when you bring these points like immigration and newcomers and these different urban centers and different initiatives and different opportunities that they can get into, it's endless possibilities. But there's just, it takes a lot of work, obviously. We both know that children and youth are our future, obviously, but are we, the general public, paying enough attention to the signs of challenges that they're facing? What are we missing here?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think we can always do more. I think one of the things that I've seen even post-pandemic, and we see how our children and youth are doing, there was a lot of disrupted relationships, a lot of time away from school, right? And so we are seeing children and youth and a rise in youth mental health and other concerns that I think we need to be paying attention to. Even if you look at social media, right? And you look at the way that we grew up and the way that we would interact, our children and youth are maybe not having that experience. And we know that, we want to make sure that we find different ways to address these concerns. Because if, families are struggling, then often that has an impact on communities and just the whole system and how the whole community social safety net works together.
Can you talk a little bit about the involvement, the planning that the youth had in getting the community center together? Because like you say, it was planned out, and so much of their input was taken into account. And with that being said, maybe what is there that having that input from them might not have been without that full input?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we wanted to create was programming and support that would have been beneficial for them, even prior to coming to our attention. And often we think that supports and services in the community just meet everybody's needs. But when we talk about children and youth who have a history of, say, abuse, trauma, or neglect, they are really searching for a sense of belonging. And so what works for them may be different. And so by having them be involved in the design of the programming, like what would have been helpful for you, they were able to create a space that not only had services that met their needs, but something that they could trust, where they felt that, they belonged. They didn't have to retell their story, which sometimes as they go to community programming, that might not be helpful for them. But the benefit of that is that, and there's a saying that I keep hearing from many of my partners, is that when we make things better for our most vulnerable, we make things better for everyone. So what we found is by helping to create that program for them, we're now able to start doing that for the community. And the goal is to provide services and supports at an early stage so that they don't need intensive services from child welfare, but it's a space where all children and youth feel that sense of belonging, and especially our most vulnerable. And so their input was critical in designing the programs. And simply put, if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for us. And so we're continuously look and getting their feedback around, is this working? And if it's not, then we correct our course pretty quickly.
I know we feel that way in the disabled community. Hey, what works for us works for everybody. Family and community being so important. Do you feel that sometimes do we lose that sentiment? What do you think of that? With I mean, you hear an example like this, and wow, this does include your family and everybody in community for sure. But have we lost sight of some of that, or is it coming back?
Yeah, I think it's important that we constantly think about how strong families create strong communities, right? And when I think about everything that's happening even in the economy right now, you think about the tariffs and those pieces. When economies are strained, families are strained. And so we need to kind of remember that. I was saying with a colleague the other day, we're talking a lot about elbows up and how as Canadians we need to really focus on making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, but we also need to keep our hearts out, because we know that if we're not taking care of all facets of society, then that can be a challenge. And you spoke before about children and youth really are our future, and so how we make sure that we're focusing on their needs and we're strengthening that family unit will lead to stronger economies, stronger communities, stronger provinces, and a stronger country.
We are coming off the heels of Children and Youth and Care Day last week. Why is it important to continue to acknowledge this campaign throughout the year?
Yeah, I think it's really important because our children and youth are an equity deserving group in their own right, from my perspective. And so often we need that reminder to remember, to remind the public, to remind policymakers of, some of the challenges they faced, but how resilient that they've been, and how we need to continue to do better in terms of system change and making sure that we're removing those barriers so that they have the ability to thrive. And that we are making sure that we meet their needs. So that constant reminder is important for us to continue to push ourselves.
Have you noticed at times, and it's interesting because it's a strange dichotomy. Canada, we always refer to it as a melting pot. So much of our heritage is built on so many newcomers, people who have laid their roots here, but at one time or another, obviously, we're coming from somewhere else and still continue to as we open our doors and welcome people. But the numbers that you read earlier, it doesn't always mean the interaction with a newcomer family or anyone like that is because of trouble in the sense of legal or something like along those lines. It may be questions because of lack of accessible information to them. Do you fight that battle with people understanding that? I mean, you point that out to us, so I obviously understand that there are people who are, there's many of these newcomer families, ethnic families in trouble. And is that something that you find that you're having to explain more than you'd think you would in a country like Canada that is so diverse?
Yeah, I think there's still work that we have to do in helping, I think, people understand how, racism, multiple other things play out in our society, right? And how that impacts systems, right? So families disproportionately come to the attention of systems, not necessarily because of actions that they've created in themselves, but it may be because of strain that's happened, right? And so we have to be able to understand those differences. And often when we're talking about newcomer populations, it's learning, like they're coming often from collective societies to a very individualistic society. And we're trying to figure out where do I go? Who do I call? What's that support network? You're building something new. So we sometimes take for granted the support networks that we have versus what it might be like for somebody who's new to Canada and just learning how to create that and just needs that education and that support.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, as usual, for making time and coming and talking to us, and just fantastic stuff to really make us think and recognize and what good work you guys are doing.
That's great. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Mary Beth Moellenkamp is the first CEO at Peel Children's Aid Society and is known for being an outcome-driven leader who continually strives to innovate, influence, and transform services for children and youth. We absolutely appreciate and thank her for coming on to address the welfare of the younger people in our communities. And Nisreen, I think it's just so wonderful when we think of the work that's being done, the open-mindedness, and when you bring youth into it, obviously you need that fresher, we always say, fresher opinion that's out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget all of this work being put in and considered, and just it's a big process. It's a long process to go through, and I, I was saying that us as the general public, I don't feel like we do enough,
No.
and we need to be open-minded about it. Yeah.
This was a discussion that I know I opened my eyes a little more during the pandemic, because I learned how many people were not getting information. We'd have these people come on TV, tell us this, tell us that, vaccinate this, potential of that, dangers here, this is what's happening. And I follow along and wow, oh my goodness, boy, I'm glad they're keeping me informed. I'm glad I know something. And then came the discussion of how are we doing making this information accessible to newcomers, to people who English is not their language, French may not be their language. And since Canada is made up so diversely, what are we doing here? How are we protecting those people? How are we, by not making sure things are as accessible, how vulnerable are we making people? And I'm curious on your feelings to that and that experience, if you recognize that during the pandemic in your circles.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people suffered during the pandemic, and it really opened a lot of people's eyes during that time. And it's a blessing in disguise to kind of give people a different perspective and see what people are going through. You don't realize, before the pandemic, we were so blinded by that.
Yeah.
We never considered that. We never thought about that. So it's just us going through the pandemic and having our eyes open to the whole situation. It gives us an opportunity to actually do something about it, and we are more willing. So we are more motivated as well.
As much as we were isolated, we really had to stick together and remember everybody and take everybody into account. And I love what we're talking as countries, how we're going to unite and take care of case when the next one happens, that we don't find ourselves as vulnerable. I mean, there are certain things you can't take out of the equation, of course. Some things maybe like masking, having that availability, maybe just something as simple as that as our make sure every country, countries who are not as lucky as some other countries are taken care of. We're looking for members of the disability community to join our AMI research panel. Our research panel guides us with every decision we make here at AMI, including programming, media consumption, and accessibility. Participants are compensated for all long-form studies. For more information and how to join, go to ami.ca/panel. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. Do us a favor too, Kelly and Company that is. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co AMI. That's Kelly & Co AMI over there on Twitter and on Instagram.
The Luminato Festival is back this June and offering many inclusive performances in theater, music, and dance, as well as unique audio-described tours around the city. Christine Malec is here with the details and the associated LuminoCity podcast. Christine, I remember last summer, you guys did a phenomenal job. I was so grateful for the opportunity to be part of that. It was amazing. Tell us about this year. Tell us about the festival and the podcast. What season is it in?
Yeah, thank you. The podcast is now in season 5. Gasp. And so I know. So Luminato is a arts and culture festival that happens in Toronto in June, and it focuses on art in the city. So that could be theater, music, art installations, performance art, and it's pretty wide ranging. This year it's happening over 3 weekends instead of weekday programming. They've sort of stretched it out and put it all on weekends, and it's done as a festival an extraordinary job of stepping up for accessibility and inclusiveness. And one of the ways that has happened is the podcast. It was formerly known as Radio Lumi, and it's now called LuminoCity, but spelled with a C. So it's one of those camel case constructed words where LUMINO, then cap CITY, sort of to emphasize the city part of luminosity. And it is, again, a collaboration between co-hosts. So myself, Ramya Amuthan, Rebecca Singh, and JJ Hunt, who are both audio describers. And so we are, I believe, episode 508, 7 and 8 were posted this week. And what the podcast does is it's a disability-led podcast. So it's guided by blind and low vision community members to include content that speaks to our interests in the festival. But what that does is it creates some pretty amazing concurrent programming with the festival, and it gives an opportunity for artists and producers to be interviewed in ways that are often new to them and to the listener. And so they'll get questions like, I'll just use some of my own examples. One of the pieces I'm working on for the podcast is to talk about something called Rainbow Dreams. And this is an art installation created by Japanese-Australian artist Hiromi Tango. And she creates visual work that draws on the theme of rainbows. And for her, this is about neurology. It's about how to access the brain in a way that is healing. And for her, the rainbow goes through the eye. So the eye becomes the mechanism to the brain that can help the brain to move in a different way or to experience a moment differently. And so we had this amazing conversation in which I tried to say, okay, so I've never seen a rainbow. I know what they are intellectually. I've never seen color. How can we bridge this gap? And it's kind of a magical thing because a lot of the artists that Ramya and I especially interview, they often say, I've never been asked that question before. And they get kind of excited because they get to think about their work in a way that some of these people, they've been interviewed thousands of times, but they don't get asked these kinds of questions. And it's an opportunity for the artist to think about their work in a different way. It's an opportunity for a blind and low vision audience to hear content that is especially sort of created with us in mind. And it's an opportunity for the wider world to hear art discussed in a way that I sort of think of it as doing what art is meant to do, which is to give us a different perspective from which to view things. And that's where I've come to the podcast this year, is with that kind of perspective on art. How can we use this podcast as a way to do what art is meant to do, to help us look at the world from different perspectives?
Art, really amazing when you think about it. I remember back when Louis Blanche was being rolled out, and it lasted. It was this big art thing, a lot of installations, a lot of different locations around town, and people would stay up to wee hours of the morning because it was a big 24-hour arts thing. And I remember being with the Glenville Players and just encouraging people when I was in Toronto back in the day, and saying, hey, you got to get out, check some of this stuff out at the levels you want. And a lot of people didn't understand what you're talking about, Christine. Not just the performers, artists, those of us in our community. It was new. It was low-hanging fruit to go and pick out for people who wanted to go and enjoy it. But it also for us, well, how is this accessible to me? From that, and what Luminato has done to get to where you guys are doing this podcast, asking those questions, and artists are sitting back saying, I never thought about this. Well, and again, everything is meant to tie into you as you feel about the artwork, about what this artist is trying to get to. So I really love that. But you mentioned theme. Is there a theme for this year's festival?
There is a theme. The theme this year is the 24-hour city. And so this
Uh-huh.
is a recognition that Toronto, particularly, I mean, most cities are like this, but Toronto maybe more than some, that there's something going on 24 hours a day. And I, um, I got to talk to the festival CEO this year as an interview, and she came here from Australia, and she remarked how she arrived at 4 in the morning, and the airport was sort of there was still people, and she came out, and there's still people, and there's people doing their thing, and so some interesting iterations of this are. Um, One that's coming up at Union Station on June 4th called Dawn Chorus. And this, I have to, I'm a self confessed morning hater. Hater. I hate mornings. I do not like them. However, at 7 a.m. On June 4th, there will be 5 choirs performing at different spots in Union Station. And I'm getting up. I'm going to be there. And I guarantee within 15 seconds, the squirt of endorphins is just going to make me a happy person. So that's one of
The
the
coffee will
first,
help
and
too.
Yeah.
well,
Somebody
yeah,
give her 3 cups of coffee before she starts, please.
Exactly. There'll be
smell of
enough
hope,
coffee. Why is that woman walking
Yeah.
around with that intravenous? Well, it's coffee
right?
for
What's
her.
that about?
But
Oh, that poor
but
woman. Oh, it's
that
coffee.
place is it's interesting because it's sort of like what you said about the airport and it's the kind of excitement. And Chris, this is up your alley. Choirs and moving from
Totally. Oh
one
my
spot to
gosh.
the other. And then when you
Oh
get
yeah.
too tired, find that bench, kick someone off of it, and take your nap
Right. Play
to
the blind
choir
card.
music.
I really need that
Yeah,
seat. I really
I
need
need
that
to
seat.
sit
And
down. My
I need
blindness
to
is
sit
hurting my
down.
feet.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And so this is one of the things the festival does really well is helping people to find art in places they don't expect.
Yes. Yes.
That's one of the themes. And so another aspect of this sort of on the opposite end is called night shifts. And what this is, it's a series of artworks that will be posted in different TTC stations depicting people who work at night, who keep our city going, who are the infrastructure that we rely on without even thinking about it. And JJ and I are going to do a podcast episode on this where we go to a couple of different stations. We did a version of this last year, but we have an innovation this year. So we're going to go check out the art, but we're also going to incorporate AI in a very fun way because, as we all know, many in the blind community are using AI increasingly for image description. So what we're going to do
Mhm.
is go there, take a photo of the artwork, get AI to describe it, and then get JJ to sort of go, oh, okay, so it got this right. It could have focused more on that. So we get the opportunity for an AI described image, but also a trained audio describer to break that down and dissect it and
I love
discuss.
that.
I know it's really innovative, and so we're going to do some of that as that will be a podcast episode as well. So that's the beauty of the podcast, right? Is if you're not in Toronto, if you don't, if you don't love going out, whatever your issues are, if you can have access to a podcast, all of this art is at your fingertips. And I want to mention one other thing, just because I just mentioned JJ, he is going to be doing an audio described dance. Well, he won't be dancing. He'll be describing a dance
Oh man.
performance. And I know, right? You want him up in fishnets and high heels, right? Who doesn't want
Yeah.
that? Um, but we've talked a lot here and in other spaces and in the community about described dance and is it valuable? Is it enjoyable? Do we like it? Do we want it? And there's been a lot of discussion about that. And what Luminato has decided to do this year is completely experiment, do something really fringy and experimental. And so I don't want to give away too much because JJ's still working on it, but we've sort of been collaborating with a dancer and a storyteller. We've all sort of been
Hmm.
talking this through, and his offering this year, the show is called What the Day Owes to the Night, and it's a group of Algerian dancers. And what JJ is planning to do is a version of described dance that I am can guarantee pretty solidly you've never heard before. And so there's also a podcast episode that talks about this as well. So if you can't make it to the dance performance, there's an earlier episode where um, myself, a dancer, a storyteller, and community members, Kim Kilpatrick and Emily Cook, we talk about described dance and what some of the challenges are. So there's just this huge array. It's like an arts
Yeah.
buffet of things for us, and specifically for us as the blind community, which is really rich.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I just want to mention JJ doing the description. Are you going to have JJ here? I think you are by your words that you chose to use. Hear what the AI describes, or is JJ's description going to be played back to back, and that's when JJ, the reveal of what AI says, JJ listens to once he has done his, whether you collect them and that kind of thing. I just wondered, because JJ's going to select a different way, different things to say about it versus the AI.
Right. No, it's very much a collaborative thing. So we will
Okay.
actually be in the subway station recording as we go, like recording
Right.
for
Yep.
the podcast. I'll take the photo, we'll hear the AI description, like we will all hear it. And then JJ will sort of be looking at it at the same time. And in real time in the subway station, he'll be sort of looking at the artwork, looking at the AI, commenting, expanding, contracting. So it's very much an interactive process. And it's something JJ and I have done a lot of talking about is how can AI and audio describers live in the same space comfortably, because there's a certain not unfounded fear among audio describers that
Of
AI
course.
is just going to replace.
Hi,
And
I'm here.
Yeah.
You're
yeah,
not.
but
Of course.
I don't think that's the case. I feel like, and I think I've said this before in this space, that I think this is an opportunity to move audio description from a craft to an art. Because what it does is it allows the audio describer to expand, to dive deeper, to experiment, and it's kind of something JJ and I have been doing in the Talk
Yeah,
Description to Me podcast for a while. Is AI could never do what we do there.
that's right. No,
AI
Mhm.
certainly can describe images of a protest, but it can't give us context of like, is this really unusual? Is this new? All the questions. It can't really answer the cultural context questions that we have. So yeah, the episode will be in real time. You'll hear us in the station. You'll hear the AI described version. Then you'll hear JJ sort of dissecting that and deconstructing it in real time. And then he gets to sort of look around, and I get to ask, so how are people reacting to this artwork, which again, something AI could
that is
not
something
do.
AI, yeah, that is the piece it could. I mean, I think in a lot of applications, AI is going to get that lead because there's no interacting to ask, except you can ask like you do with ChatGPT. Well, what if, or what, how many, is there people around, or is it by, how, you could ask those things, it will answer them, but certainly not the response, not the human compassionate side of answering something like that an on the spot
Yeah.
describer can do.
Yeah, yeah, and the
And I think
subtlety of like,
even, yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Najri.
I was gonna say even having him, dissect what AI is saying and describing, I think that opportunity will get people, you will prove that point that it's very different. It's
Yes.
more uh, interaction. Oh my God, what's the word? It's more communicative rather
Yeah,
than very robotic,
it's
and
responsive, that's for
it's
sure.
more responsive. That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, that's. I think you'll prove that point once he breaks it down.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something we've been sort of wanting to do for a while, which is to just take some time and opportunity to take images, AI descriptions, and then just discuss like what is
Yeah,
AI doing well? What are its limitations? Because AI is here to stay, and that's just true. And it's
yeah,
been transformative for our community in a way that the broader world, I think, doesn't really know or understand. So this is also an opportunity to uh, slightly undemonize AI for the broader world, perhaps, because I think that this is an element that is just not very well understood, that AI is a huge service to our community.
yeah,
And yeah, the interaction as well. And see, this
Yeah.
AI cannot look around and see the subtlety of, ooh, that person just gave a really funny side-eye look to that painting. I don't think he liked it
yeah,
at all. And so all those subtleties of culture and just surroundings, AI is never going to be able. There's still room for AI to grow, but I don't think it's ever going to get to that subtlety.
Boy, it's an interesting banter when you get talking
yeah.
about that. Tell us, what access measures are going to be in place at Luminato?
There's a raft of described shows. So there's some live theater, there's some dance, there's there's a music performance that has sort of a robust pre-show notes that you can access before the show. There are also, again, the opportunity for whisper guides, which means that there's a sort of Luminato hub down at Harborfront Center where some of the art installations are. And if you are in the city, you can reserve a whisper guide, which means that at a time of your choosing, you can say, I'm going to be at Harborfront Square. Can I get a sighted guide to walk me around, describe some things for me? So these would be people trained in sighted guide techniques and who are, you know, averagely able to describe what's going on around. So that gives access to just some independence. You want to go at this particular time, you want a guide if you're blind or low vision, that can happen. The podcast, of course. There will be a couple of actual walking tours. And so these are opportunities for members of the community to be guided by JJ through the hub itself. So through around some of the art installations, some of the vendors, some of the things that are just sort of going on in the space. So the access sort of broadened a bit this year because we wanted to experiment with some of the walks JJ has done, and those are always very popular. So expanded a bit for that as well. So Rebecca will be describing a lot of the theater pieces, and she has contributed many episodes. So we've sort of divided up the podcast episodes, and she's done several of her episodes are available already on. And there's such a range in the offerings. There's environmental stuff, there's theater stuff, there's experimental theater. Ramia's done a great interview on some experimental theater. And each there's venue guides, there's ASL, there's such a raft, there's such a intentional focus on accessibility that if there's something you need, and also just being able to email a one person directly. So Emily Maxwell
Oh,
is
yeah.
yeah, it's the concierge service, they call it, which I now call the divine concierge service because it's so great.
Mm.
So instead of the cognitive load of having to book tickets for, 5 different shows and la 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 la, you can email one person and say, I would like to attend this, 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 and this, and I would like audio description devices, and I may need some assistance with X, Y, and Z. And
That's
so
nice.
instead of having to take the 25 steps that might have taken, you can deal with one person. And that is enormously helpful if you've ever tried to navigate a festival, or even a single performance sometimes requires 3 different contacts in order to get yourself set up safely to attend. And so there's some references in the show notes, but emaxwell@luminato.com is the email for all festival accessibility things. And you can check out the website too, of course. But the podcast is, LuminoCity, LuminoCity. So if you look at that on your podcast app, it might come up as Radio Lumi as well, because that's the old name. And if you
Yeah,
subscribe to that, you're going to get a barrage of fantastic content.
love it.
Love it too. And there's no bias. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I meant great promotion. Um, as you should be doing,
right,
or
I
you
love
should
it.
be kicked out. That's for sure.
All
But
right, well,
what I want to know is how many other organizations are going to Luminato saying, tell us about what you do for accessibility because you're leading the way.
yeah. Yes,
Mm.
I know that happens. I know for sure that
Good for them.
happens. And
Wow.
yeah. I mean, am I biased? 100%. Kelly, tomorrow I get to interview someone who invented their own musical instrument. Like, come on. This is
Wow.
great. His name's Justin Gray. He invented something named the bass vina, which is a combination of a bass and an Indian stringed instrument. It's got 3 sets. See, I get to just do the most interesting things. So
Man,
I
can you
love,
imagine hearing that in a song and
Yeah.
wondering what that is and trying to figure
You
it
think
out
it's
and
3? No,
trying to
you think it's
research it?
3.
Well,
What
yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
would think it's 2 or 3 different instruments, but
Oh,
no,
that's wild.
he invented the instrument. So this piece, Immersed, is you go in and there's like dozen speakers surrounding you, and you get
Ooh.
the surround sound of Dolby Atmos of this guy's music. It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
I get to
Well,
do all
you're
I
my
gonna
hope it's
favorite.
not
feature his
too early in the
music.
day and you're sleeping again.
It's an evening
Yeah.
performance. Thank you
Oh,
very
okay,
much
so
for
you're good.
checking
Oh,
You're
in
thank
good.
that
God.
one.
You're
I'm
good.
good.
You're
Oh,
good.
thank
I'll be
God.
happy right from the
I can
get-go.
picture Christine throwing hands in the morning, like, "Don't talk
Yes.
to me."
Oh, oh
Nasreen
God,
would need
I'm the
for
worst.
sure the IV even at Union Station for the coffee. With
Yeah,
Right. Oh
absolutely,
yeah.
Chris, that's
me too.
great.
Yeah.
Oh, good luck
Thank you
this year,
so
guys.
much. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
you guys are killing it. So if you're not in Toronto, check out the Luminosity podcast wherever you get your podcast from. That's Luminosity spelled with a C to indicate city, obviously. Awesome.
Amazing. Really cool stuff. Folks, you can email us at kellyco@ami.ca. We'd love to hear from you anytime you get a moment. Call us at 1-866-509-4545. Leave a message. Maybe we can even play it on the air if you don't mind. A recent report published by Community Living Ontario is shedding light on the exclusion, seclusion, and restraint of students with disabilities in Ontario schools. Numerous authorities are calling on the Premier and the Minister of Education to act now to address these issues immediately. Shawn Pegg is the Director of Social Policy and Strategic Initiatives with Community Living Ontario, and he's here with the insights on this particular report released in April 2025. Shawn, thank you for being with us here on Kelly and Company.
Thanks for having me today.
Let's start with the most startling stats and realities that students with disabilities in Ontario are facing at this time.
Yes, so as part of the Ontario School Inclusion Study, which we did with Jess Whitley at the University of Ottawa, we had 541 parents and other caregivers of students with disabilities provide information. And it's true, we found a pretty surprising number of students being restrained, secluded, and excluded in Ontario schools. For example, nearly a third of parents said their child had been secluded or isolated while in school, including being put in a room on their own behind a locked or blocked door. 14% reported that their child had been restrained while in school, including being held down on the ground or held while being forced to walk. And additionally, a third reported that their child had been sent home or told to stay home because the school didn't have enough supports in place to be able to meet their child's emotional and learning needs. So certainly really disturbing and shocking numbers. And it's a bit harsh to hear these things, but I think it's important to know that this is happening in Ontario schools, at the very moment we're speaking.
Well, and you get further into the thought that when people do these things, it's lack of understanding or intolerance right off the bat. If you're grabbing a student because you can't communicate, or there's in your mind this person, this child doesn't understand, this is the way I have to do it. With all the pressures and things people are under already, you just wonder how many times are you people. Not only should you not be touching somebody. And I understand certain circumstances, family situations, certain disabilities, there's different stories for each individual. But when you're touching these people out of anger, frustration, and nobody can tell me that doesn't happen, if this kind of thing's happening, Shawn, this is so frightening when you think about it in that context, on top of what you're telling us.
Yeah, what we heard from parents over and over again is that teachers and other school staff, for the most part, are doing the best they can under difficult circumstances. We heard that there is just not enough support in classrooms.
Yeah.
Like you said, many teachers don't have the training and knowledge needed to really understand the needs of many students with disabilities. And I always double and triple check this because I have a hard time believing that there is no policy at the provincial level on restraint or seclusion. So boards are being left to their own devices, and many boards don't even have a policy on these issues. So school staff they don't really know what to do. They don't know how to prevent complicated situations from happening, and they, like you said, they struggle to respond appropriately when what we call externalizing behaviors among students do happen, where they might be engaging in behavior that is risky to themselves or others.
That's so frightening, honestly, just to hear those stats and to know that. But what exactly should we be taking away from all of these upsetting findings? What's the message here?
Well, this is not a new issue. There was a similar report put out in 2019 by Autism Advocacy Ontario with very similar results. We have reports of seclusion and restraint going back, more than 10 years. We know this has been going on in schools for quite a long time. So, for me, we're way past due the point where the Premier and the Minister of Education need to put their minds to this. They need to take this seriously. And we need the province to offer guidance for school boards on how to prevent these things from happening. We need, we don't even understand really the extent to which restraint, seclusion, and exclusion is happening. We've created a snapshot of these issues, but in many cases, parents don't even know this is happening. Like, consider a situation where a student doesn't use verbal language to communicate, and they don't have even the ability to tell their parents that this has happened. A lot of parents, like almost half of parents said that there have been situations where their child was secluded or restrained, and it was another student or another parent that they found out from. So there's a really huge reporting issue here. Many schools have seclusion rooms, essentially padded rooms with locked doors, and we don't even know which schools have these rooms. And it's not something that a lot of people talk about. So there's a reporting issue, there's a policy issue, and then there's like a leadership issue on the part of the Ministry of Education here.
I remember so many people when I was a kid in school, they're coming from the main system and just have been told, well, we don't know how to teach you. We don't know what to do with you. Sit in a corner, and wasting years and getting behind. And you're wondering, well, how come this kid at 9 years old is only in grade 2? What's going on here? And this was the kinds of things that were going on then. So when one says to you, is this stuff new? I don't know about it. Has this been going on forever? Is it old? And is it getting better or worse? What are the factors that are contributing? What is the reality for the students with disabilities when you got a premier and people who have other things on their mind for the general public? And where do these things fall in line?
Well, this is certainly something that teachers are heavily engaged on. I feel that, over the years, teachers and teachers' unions have developed a way of talking about this that is respectful of students, that places blame for externalizing behaviors on the system, on a lack of resources and supports in the system. I feel like sometimes it can grade into blaming students for externalizing behavior. But I think overall, teachers are heavily engaged on this. They are consistently advocating for more resources in the classroom and more guidance from the province. So, even though this isn't a new issue, I feel like this understanding approach that sees students as, needing to come to an environment that can be extremely stressful, extremely anxiety provoking for many students, not just students with disabilities. So I feel like, we're getting to a place where we understand what students need, but we are kind of stuck with this education system that has been designed in a way that does not at all meet the needs of a lot of students with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. And how are parents and caregivers being supported?
In many ways, they're not. One of the reasons we did this research is because we kept getting calls from parents who were facing these kinds of situations. And they didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know where to go. So certainly in many regions, there are parent groups who are supportive. However, it's very difficult. Parents who have already gone through these kinds of situations and have the experience and know what to do are dealing with a lot in many cases. These days, in single parent families, it's extremely difficult for a parent who's working full time to be engaged as an advocate in schools with a child who has a disability. Even with two-parent families, both parents tend to be working. So it's not easy to be doing these things. We know, for example, that for students who are only going to school for 2 or 3 hours a day, parents are being called to come pick them up early because the supports just aren't in place for them. And parents are leaving jobs in order to be able to support their kids at home. So it's honestly, when it comes to support for parents and information on what to do, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah. Shawn, if you could in 30 seconds, what's our call to action then? What should we be doing?
First and foremost, we need more support in the classrooms. We need more EAs, more early childhood educators, more special education teachers. We also need to address the fact that children are waiting more than a year to get access to things like occupational therapy, speech language therapy. We also need more training for teachers and other school staff so they understand how to meet the emotional and learning needs of students with disabilities. And again, we really need clear provincial policy on the use of restraint and seclusion with an eye to limiting and strictly limiting and reducing the use of restraint and seclusion.
Fantastic, Shawn. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking so open with us. Community Living Ontario is a nonprofit provincial association that has been advocating with people who have intellectual disabilities and their families for 70 plus years. Visit communitylivingontario.ca for more information and resources for what we covered today. Nazreen and I will be back, and on our next show, Michael Fair opens up the world of possibility for entertainment on your smartphone. He wrote a book on how to make the most out of your iPhone from a totally blind perspective, and he's here with the goods tomorrow. We'll talk to him then. We're waving at you. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.